At this time, I would like to thank our candidates for coming in and being under the hot seat. I'd also like to let you know that Mark Hargrove is sorry to not be here. He was planning on being here, but he did get called to Tanzania to do some flight checks. James Dillon confirmed, and he's not here. All right. Throw him under the bus. All right. I'd also like to bring your attention to the MSC. We want to let you know that if you want to join our honorary co-chair, Senator Joe Fain, and Representative Tina Orwell at the 5th Annual MSC Helps Luncheon on October 18th at Emerald Downs. You will learn more about the work that MSC does in the community. And we have a couple of table captains here, so if you're interested in going, you can see Sarah or Andy Wangstad or Jim Barrios, and I'm sure they would love for you to join them at their table. It is now my pleasure to introduce our co-chair of Government Affairs, Carmen Goers, the Vice President of Commercial Lending Officer at Heritage Bank. She brings 25 years of business banking expertise, both internationally and locally, to her current position. Carmen's been active with our organization and leadership for the past 3 years and is the Government Affairs co-chair. She's an amazing leader. She's also served as the president of the South Sound Chambers of Commerce Legislative Coalition. Many of you have seen Carmen moderate these debates before. We love how she commands the room with ease, making what could be a stressful event fun and light. Candidates, you're in for a treat, but I'll be the first to warn you, stay within those time limits. Carmen isn't messing around. Please help me welcome co-chair Carmen Goers.
So the mother of three, I do know how to move you forward. I'm not offended, but you know, love you much. Okay. I do want to say thank you for letting me do moderate today. I do enjoy this. I do appreciate being part of the community. And on behalf of our members and our guests, I want to thank you all for taking the time to show up here today, as well as to run and put yourselves out there for public service. We do appreciate that, despite the looks we may give you. Okay. So we have prepared some initial questions for the candidates who are running for state legislative positions from the 47th District. And before we begin with the questions, you will have 90 seconds to introduce yourselves. Prior to today's, every candidate was given the information to give us a brief remark about the following items in 90 seconds: their education, training, and professional background, their current employment, and why they are a candidate for state legislature. For everyone's information, our first two questions will be about issues, so you won't need to include that in your introductory remarks. Okay. Now, it is my responsibility. I've taken an oath to faithfully discharge my duties by keeping us on time, and I will adhere to that. So if you should run past 90 seconds, you will get a very robust thank you, and then I will have to take the mic away from you. Please don't make me come and do that. Okay? So we will, so to assist me will be Brandy in the front, and so she will keep track of the time and give you time cards there. We will begin the introductions as well with State Senate. So we'll begin with State Senator Joe Fain. Mr. Tired Man.
Mr. Tired. Well, thank you whoa, there it is.
I gotta get away from you now.
That's a hot mic. Well, it is wonderful to be here today, even if it is a lot of feedback. And I just I'll start with the questions at hand. Joe Fain, State Senator from the 47th District, graduate from the University of Washington in Political Science and History, and a Master's in Business from Seattle University, and a law degree from Seattle University. And I'm outside the legislature. I'm a healthcare attorney, working with many of our providers and hospital networks here in the state of Washington. Hello. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to talk like this for a moment, and then we'll come back to that when we get that set. I've got a 2-year-old and a 1-month-old at home, so if I'm slightly incoherent, it's not just the microphone today. But I do want to say, I go through a litany of issues that are important to me and a lot of the stuff that I've worked on for the last few years. But in the brief time that I have left, I think what's important now in our politics is that we really push away these ideas of hyper-partisanship and of the anger that seems to be seeping in at all corners of our politics right now, and really try to find those folks that can build consensus. And I think that that's been my history during my time in the legislature, I think that's really been what I've been about. I know that I know almost every person in this room, and at one point or another, you've either come up and said, good job, or you've come up and you said, what in the heck were you thinking? And I think that's exactly the way it's supposed to work.
Am I that one? I'm not. I tried to turn myself off for you. Am I on?
I don't know if it was this.
All right, I guess we'll all talk loudly today.
Try. Try.
Okay, so now Ms. Mona Das.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Mona Das and I am running for the state senate here in the 47th. Thank you so much for the Kent Chamber of Commerce for hosting us here today. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my story. My family came here from India when I was 8 months old with $6 in our pocket and really a dream for a better life. And education was what propelled our family to pull ourselves up from our bootstraps and make sure that we had the tools that we needed to thrive in this country. I'm running because I believe that we need more voices at the table, we need more diversity, we need business owners, so I've been running my own mortgage business for the last 14 years, and I focus on first-time home buyers, so 42% of our clients are first-time home buyers, and I want to make sure that they have a pathway out of poverty and a pathway into the middle class, and that's why I focus on first-timers. I have an MBA in sustainable business, so the environment is something that is near and dear to my heart, and look forward to getting into the issues today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we will hear from the candidates for position number 1 in the House, Debra Enterman.
Hi, I'm Debra Enterman. My background, I am a product of the first Seattle-King County Head Start classroom. I have grown up in and around this community. My husband and I have lived here for the past 30 years. I received my AA degree from Highline Community College, transferring to Seattle University to get a BA in political science and a minor in history. I am currently employed as the district director for Congressman Adam Smith, the representative from the 9th Congressional District, your federal representative in DC. I have worked for Adam for the past 12 years, the last 3 as the district director. The reason why I am running is because I'd like, one, for members of our community to have the same educational opportunities that I did. I believe we sometimes underestimate what happens at community and technical colleges. As a board member for Renton Technical College, I want to make sure that we have the same equity at the state legislature as they do for the 4-year colleges and universities. I'd like to help to provide more affordable housing in our community, and I'd like to make our tax system more fair. Thank you very much for the Kent Chamber for this opportunity to speak with you.
And finally, we will hear from position number 2 in the House of Representatives, Representative Sullivan.
Thank you very much to the Kent Chamber of Commerce for putting the event on today, and thank you all for coming this afternoon. I am a current state representative from the 47th District. I served as mayor of Covington for a number of years before going to the legislature. I serve as majority leader. I've been majority leader for the last 8 years. My wife Amy and I have lived in South King County for about the last 30 years. We're celebrating our 31st wedding anniversary actually today. Raised our 3 daughters here, all graduated from Kent Public Schools, and my last one is a freshman, or just got her through her first year at CLU, so we're excited about that. You know, to piggyback a little bit off of what Joe said, unlike Washington, D.C., in Olympia, we actually get things done. If you look at the number of bills that pass, a vast majority, over 90% of them are bipartisan bills where we get together and we have to compromise. I've taken on a lot of education issues over the last several years, and that's what the focus has been on, trying to find consensus on bills to move the system forward. I'm proud of that work that's been done, and I want to go back and continue to do that work, not only in K-12, but in higher ed and early learning as well, because I think there's a lot of work to be done there. I'm proud to have been endorsed by the mayors of all the cities that have a portion of the 47th District, as well as Association of Washington Business, and many individuals and business owners here in the Kent, Auburn, and Covington community. Thanks again for being here today.
Thank you. And Lindsey Shumway.
Hi, my name is Lindsey Shumway, and my background, I was born and raised in Renton. I was the student body president of Lindbergh High School. I have a bachelor's degree in communication from BYU. I have a health coaching certification from Villanova University, and I currently have a practice that I work from my home in Kent, across the street from Lake Meridian, serving the community all over the United States. Actually, my clients are all over the nation, to lose weight and to regain their health. I decided to run because I feel like my family, we're a very hardworking family. My husband and I have been married for 19 years. We have 3 children. And it seemed like every month there was a new tax that we were being asked to pay, more money that was going to come out of our mortgage that was going to be taken away from our kids. And we felt like there's got to be some responsibility. So as a stay-at-home mom, I manage the budget and I live within my means. I practice self-reliance and I turn to my husband and my extended family when I have trouble and trial. And I hope that my government will support me in that very important work that I'm trying to do in my home of raising my children. And the more money that I have to pay in taxes, the less money I have to raise them. And it became so frustrating to me and the people that I was talking to that I decided to run. I feel like I can bring a mother's and a woman's opinion to the table, and I feel like that's needed in Olympia right now more than ever.
Thank you. And Ted Cooke.
Hello, my name is Ted Cooke. Whoa, this is hot.
I try.
Wow. Hello.
Welcome to North East Hill.
I'm ready to represent you. I have a bachelor in theology from Beacon University, Columbus, Georgia. I also hold an MCSE and several related technology certificates. I'm a senior software tester at Microsoft. I work for a vending company. I've been in a position for 7 years. I've had 4 different vending companies come and go, but I am still there. I'm running to represent you because I think we're being taxed too much, and I think government is telling us too much what we can do and what we cannot do. The specific issue that got me into this was when business owners were told, and churches were told, that if you provide an insurance plan and it covers pregnancy, it has to also cover taking life in the womb. And I think that is government going way too far. And that got me looking at the things that were passed this last session in Olympia. And government is getting so far into people's lives. If someone's not committing fault, murder, or theft, I think generally people should be left to do what they want to do. I'm a big believer in local control. I'm not a huge believer in supremacy where the state comes down and says the city or the county has to do this or that, unless the city or county is committing fault or violating individual rights. And I'm a big fan of individual rights. So, thank you.
Thank you for those introductory remarks. We will now turn to our prepared questions. Unless I indicate otherwise on some questions, I will. Each candidate will have a maximum of 90 seconds for their answers. As we move through the questions, I will rotate both the order of the 3 races and the order in which candidates in each race will speak in order to help ensure fairness for everyone and to keep you paying attention, and the mic will keep moving. So this is my fun part. Just simple joys for me. So question number 1. Have you ever owned a business or worked in a business where you personally had bottom line responsibility or accountability for the firm's financial success or financial failure? If so, what is the most important lesson you learned from that experience that you can apply to your state, to your service in the legislature if you are elected? If not, what is the most important thing you've learned in this regard from your interactions with the business owners in our chamber who must shoulder that responsibility, and how would you apply that wisdom to your service in the legislature if you are elected? So first, our candidates for the position number 2, beginning with Lindsey Shumway.
I've spent my career working for entrepreneurs. I am an entrepreneur of myself now, so I have full control over the success or failure of my business, and there's 2 things that I've learned. One, it's all about relationships, and the more that you love the people you serve, the more success you have. So I would apply that if I was elected, for sure. The other thing that I've learned is that you can't do it and you can't succeed alone. You cannot rely only on your experience, your knowledge, and your expertise. You need to have people around you who can advise you and support you and work together as a team. That is also what I would strive to do if I was elected. Bring love to the job and work as a team.
Thank you. Representative Pat Sullivan.
Well, thank you very much. I have not owned a business in my lifetime. I've worked at plenty of different jobs over my career. But I rely on people who I know who are business owners. I mean, one of the reasons why I was endorsed by the Association of Business is because I'm willing to sit down and really talk about the issues that are important to the business community. One thing I hear over and over again is the cumulative impact of decisions that we make and how those decisions impact their businesses. I've spent a lot of time, I won't say hours, but probably hours talking to Jim Barrios about the impact of the decisions that we make on the restaurant industry, the impact the minimum wage has on his ability to hire both the servers, but also the back of the restaurant staff who don't get tips. And those are the things that I think are really important, is to have those conversations, to really know what the impact of decisions that we're making, so that we can make good decisions that lead to successful businesses in our local communities. And so I'll continue to do that. It's something that I take as a personal issue for me, that when I vote on something, I want to know what the impact is. I want to be able to have those conversations to ensure that it's the right decision.
Thank you. Ted Cooke.
So I've never owned a business. I have been a director on a couple of corporations, one Timberlane Homeowners Association, and another one is Portable Academic Lap Disc, or PAL, which is an African education nonprofit. So a business needs about, as far as I understand it, 10% profitability to really be sustainable. And the state B&O tax, I've seen that take out a couple of friends' businesses. I've got another friend who started a business and they cleared $1 million in sales in 1 year. The son had taken $30,000 in salary and the dad had completely forgone salary. And they received a bill for $1,800 because they actually assembled parts from China in their garage. And if any part of a product is assembled in the state of Washington, there's a separate $1,800 assembly tax. I think our taxes are out of control. I think we're getting slaughtered too by energy and transportation. Boutique transportation like light rail, number one, I believe it was sold to the people on false premises. I think we should put Sound Transit 3 on hold, and I think we need to build more roads. But if you look at boutique transportation and energy, the King County Democrats actually have a plank in the platform which says no new conventional energy. It all needs to be wind or solar. That's a tax on the most needy among us, and that's a tax on businesses. That's the kind of thing that kills businesses and hurts our most vulnerable populations the most. Thank you.
Thank you. State Senate candidate Mona Das.
Thank you. As I mentioned before, I've been running my own mortgage business for the last 14 years. And what I've learned is making sure that you work with your employees and making sure that you work with all the stakeholders. So in my business, making sure the underwriter is happy is the most important thing. And I think that we need to make sure that in the legislature that folks are working together. We need to get all the stakeholders involved, and bottom line is something that we've got to look at every day. One thing that I do in my business is I work with clients every day to, they want to afford a certain house, and so we need to make sure that they pay off some of their debt or get a higher paying job, and so we're continually balancing their budget to make sure that they can get into their house that they're looking for getting into. So I look forward to taking those skills with me to the legislature.
Senator Joe Fain.
Thank you. So I started off as a swim coach, and I was the general manager for Olympia View Swim and Tennis Club. So if you're a Kent Swim and Tennis Club, I'm sorry, I grew up across the valley. And I was the general manager and the operations manager there. And then I started a small business when I got out of college that was doing electronics recycling and bringing in goods from South America that they didn't have the recycling capacity down there, and so I was shipping some of those things into Texas and refining the metals and things like that. And then now as an attorney, I'm the managing attorney for the firm and working through a lot of restructuring and trying to really get a handle on the finances. And what all three of those experiences, very, very different managing experiences, have to do, had in common was I was always trying to figure out what X was. What are the things that I don't know? What is the bill that's going to show up that I am not expecting? And at the end of the day, I was able to work through a lot of those things. Like, I know how much roughly my payroll is going to be. I know roughly how much I'm going to have to pay for mailing. I know how much I'm going to have to pay on rent. But I continued to have an X factor in the government category. I didn't know from year to year what the level of stability was going to be in my tax rates. And so there is a whole much more we could talk about in terms of people and teamwork and things like that. But one of the biggest skills from my private sector experience that I've taken to Olympia is really trying to understand what's the X and how can I figure out what that number is.
Thank you. That's twice now, Joe. Debra Enterman.
Although I have not had the opportunity to run a business in this community, what I have learned as district director is that building relationships with community resources, people who are leaders in areas, to talk to them about how what we plan to do will affect them is key to the success in the work that I do. So I would like to continue to do that as an elected representative in this community. I think it is important, if you don't know things, to admit that you don't know them, and that you look for the resources and do the research to find out the answers to questions that will be important to the business owners and important to community members as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold the mic, Debra. So for question number 2, for the last 6 years, largely in response to the McCleary decision, basic education has been a focal point at the legislature. The Washington Supreme Court recently approved the legislature's efforts in response to McCleary. Even so, 2 items continue to be discussed. Those involve the definition of basic education, particularly as it relates to special education, and the type and amount of taxes the legislature approved to pay for McCleary, particularly in light of recent revenue forecasts and property tax burdens on high-value properties. So what changes, if any, would you support or oppose regarding, and there's 3 here, the kinds of taxes the legislature approved to pay, the amount of taxes that were approved to pay for McCleary, the definition of basic education, such as special education, exactly how would you pay for those? So that's kind of a big question. And I start with Debra.
All right. So if I'm understanding the question directly, I believe that McCleary was a start, but there is more to do. When we are looking at special education and classroom size, we still have a number of our students in the Kent School District who are in portables. I would like to build more schools so that we can have all of those children in a classroom that is at an equitable size, so the teacher is allowed to teach which he or she is trained to do. I do believe that we may need to increase taxes in order to do this. I know that it is difficult because I too live in Kent, and I have seen the increase in my property tax bill between the city of Kent and King County. So I know that that is a difficult thing to say, but I think it is a priority for us and our paramount duty as members of the legislature and as community to make sure education is fully funded in this state. And I'm sorry, there was a third part of that question.
What changes, if any, would you support or oppose regarding the kinds of taxes, the amounts, and the definition?
So I know that so our tax system is unfair, and our property tax system that funds our schools is unfair because we have unfair housing issues, housing plans that are biased and unfair. I think that there needs to be a number of changes. I would like to see some way for us to think about Mason County and Lake Washington, and if there is additional funds in Lake Washington, I don't understand why we can't use those funds.
Thank you, Debra Enterman. We're going to position number 2, beginning with Ted Cooke. See how I keep us all engaged here?
So I think McCleary has had a good outcome, but I disagree with the way it was made, because if you look at the state constitution, Article 1, Section 2 says that the legislative power of the state of Washington shall be vested in the state legislature. And the word vested means non-transferable. So I don't think it was the court's purview to tell us how to do it. That said, I think it's been a positive outcome. I do not like property taxes because I think they're unfair. I like flat taxes. I like fair and flat taxes, which are spread evenly. As I understand it, we're doing a good job of funding now. I'm not a fan of earmarking funds or forcing what people have to spend at the local level. I think that the district should be held accountable for their spending at the local level, but also have control at the local level. That said, this is a time of great adjustment, and there are probably some districts, I can think of 1 or 2, where the state may have to step in and provide emergency funding if they haven't been managed well in the past or if they're undergoing leadership change. So that may occur, but I think we're on the right path, the right road.
Thank you. Lindsey Shumway.
So, I think that so much money in the last 10 years has been dedicated to education, that there has been a huge investment in education in Washington State. So the question that me and other parents of children in public schools are left asking ourselves is, why isn't that making it to our classrooms? The last number that I heard was 60 cents on every dollar that's been given to education is actually making it to the classroom. So I am not in favor of raising any taxes that have to do with education. I would oppose any such legislation. But I think that we need to be asking ourselves, how can we get better results with the money that we currently are spending? There are lots of other states where their test scores and their results are better, but their funding is so much less than ours. Why is that? Maybe we could look into it. But from my own personal point of view, I actually took my kids out of public school for 15 months because I thought I'd give it a swing myself, you know, being a homeschooling mom. But there's so little support for homeschool in this state that I finally gave up and decided that I would lean on the public school system to support me. But school isn't fun anymore. It's test after anxiety-producing tests. And I think kids ought to have fun. So when it comes to what is the definition of basic education, we need some fun. We need to have some fun. For art, for example, we need to have field trips. We need to have fun. That's what I think about education.
Thank you. Representative Pat Sullivan.
Well, I was one of the individuals who served on what was called the McCleary 8 and helped negotiate the current system that we have in place right now. It certainly isn't a perfect solution. It's one that will undergo change year after year. I mean, the notion that now that the court has backed off of the decision and no longer maintains jurisdiction and that education is done as a fallacy. We will negotiate not only policy but funding of K-12 from now until we're all gone from here. I mean, it's over 50% of the budget. The property tax wasn't my personal favorite. You know, the Constitution does call it the common school levy, so there's a nexus there around the property tax. Here in Kent, what you're going to see next year, there is an overlap between the increase in the state rate and then the reduction in the local levy rate. And so next year, for an average $375,000 home, you're going to see a combination of reduction from both the local levy and a reduction in the state levy that we passed last year of about $500 for that $375,000 home. So there will be a reduction that will come next year as a result of the decisions that we made last year. And I won't get into the whole equity of our current tax system. That's a whole other issue. I do think that there's more work that needs to be done. Particularly, you mentioned special education. We need to do more work around those investments, and I think that next year is the year. We have a work group that's actually producing recommendations that hopefully we can implement next year.
Thank you. Senator Joe Fain. Your time begins now.
Thank you. Well, I echo a lot of what Pat had to say here. I think the work that was done over the last several years has been very strong for education. It is beneficial that because we have been paying more than our fair share, being an area that's so close to Seattle that doesn't have the type of high-rises and condominiums and expensive real estate that's been able to very easily generate a lot of money for schools. Since we didn't have that, what we had instead were incredibly high tax rates, property tax rates. And because the state is taking on more of that responsibility at the state level, obviously still a statewide tax, and taking that responsibility off the locals, that's going to be a tax reduction for us. And I think that also provides equalization so that communities that have a little bit less income, a little bit harder time raising resources for schools, they're going to come out of this plan better as a result. So I think that's a positive move. I'm very happy that the question involves the question of special ed, because every time someone asks me what's the next step in the education evolution here in Washington State, is we have got to. It doesn't matter what a court says at this point. This is about what do we need to do for students. In fact, all along, the question needs to be, what is it that's going to be best for students? And right now, what's going to be best for students is dialing up the apportionment for special education, make sure that we are doing things to target special education teachers to get in the classroom, because we do not have enough special education teachers in Washington State.
Thank you. Mona Das.
Yes, when we look at the McCleary decision, we know that we fully funded education, but there are some gaps. And the biggest gaps are among special education and technology. We need to prepare our students for the future, and we need to make sure that we've got the resources to do so. We know what works, making sure class sizes stay small, and we've got the teachers. We want to make sure that the teachers are properly compensated. I know when we almost laid off 138 teachers earlier this year, a lot of those teachers went to other districts because they were looking for more stability in jobs, and a lot of other districts pay more. And so we need to make sure that we keep those teachers here, and we keep them working for our students and making sure that there's a good class to teacher size ratio. We also need to prepare our students for the technology for the future. And there's lots of jobs that are available that are not being met currently. There's labor jobs, and there's a lot of apprenticeship jobs that are available too. So there's lots of things that we can do to focus our kids on education in our state.
Thank you. So there seems to be considerable tax fatigue among voters in the wake of recent tax-related decisions involving the state legislature, special taxing districts such as Sound Transit, as mentioned, and local governments. Even so, a number of proposals for additional tax revenues have been identified as possible discussion topics for the 2019 session, and at least one may be on the ballot before then. So we're going to ask a two-part question. The first part is going to be a lightning round, and we're going to ask for nonverbal responses on 8 different tax proposals. So the 3 nonverbal options are you have a thumbs up, a thumbs down, and a thumbs sideways. In support of, in opposition of, or you prefer not to answer.
Or unsure.
Or unsure.
That is not what this says. It says if you prefer not to answer. People have run amok now. So after we've worked out our thumbs, each candidate will have, or unsure, I will acquiesce. Each candidate will have a minute to explain their nonverbal answers or to offer any comments they might wish to share. Sound like fun? Sounds great. All right. So thumbs.
I'm actually
It's going to be
You don't wish to
here.
answer, Senator? So thumbs ready. Here we go. Okay. A new state capital gains tax. Thumbs up, down, or sideways. Okay. A new state carbon tax, also refers to as a new state tax on energy. Thumbs up, down, or sideways. I love the two-handers. A head tax, also referred to as a job creation penalty tax.
No editorializing there, huh?
No, of course not. Increasing the state portion of the B&O tax. Increasing the state portion of the sales tax. Giving local governments new taxing authority. Okay, no editorial, right? A constitutional amendment authorizing a state income tax. Okay. Thank you for those nonverbal responses. So for the candidates' verbal follow-up, you'll have 60 seconds. And we're going to first start, we'll hear from State Senate Mona Das.
For my sideways answers?
Or what you want to respond to.
Oh, okay. I think we know as business owners that we are highly burdened with the B&O tax. And so that's something that we need to definitely take a look at. We are also looking to stop burdening the middle class continually. The backs of the middle class are focusing, really got many taxes on us. And I know that folks really, small business owners, homeowners, my clients can't afford the homes that they could afford even last year because property taxes have gone up. So we need to look at alternative revenue sources.
Thank you. Senator Joe Fain.
I hate lightning rounds, but I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation about these issues on the back end. I think from the one of the things that I'm concerned about the capital gains tax that seems to come up every year after year is there really is an impact on affordable housing if you implement a capital gains tax. And again, all of these things are subject to how you actually construct these policies. But one thing that we do need to recognize is that if you have multifamily housing and apartment complexes that sell between every 5 and 8 years and you slap a 7% capital gains tax on them, that's as much as $1,000 per unit, and that gets passed on to the consumer. And so we really need to make sure that we're not just taking the shiny object and moving it forward, but we understand the unintended consequences of the proposals that come up in Olympia.
Debra Enterman.
So I would support reforms to the B&O tax. It seems to me that if we're looking at Boeing and if we're looking at a small business owner, there should be some differences. And so that is one thing that I would support.
Thank you. From position number 2, Representative Pat Sullivan.
So I agree with Joe in the fact that I hate lightning rounds, and that I also think that it depends upon the devil's in the details around any proposal. The carbon taxes have been in the legislature through the last several years. I have not been in favor of. The process that they've gone through as far as which industries are exempted and which ones are not is just, it's a crazy process that doesn't work. As far as capital gains, the last proposal we had exempted family-owned businesses. Again, it depends upon how it's crafted. I favored a capital gains tax over an increase in the property tax, or at least a combination, so that property wasn't quite so heavy and the impacts weren't so great on, especially for senior citizens, for people who bought their first house and can't afford that increase in their mortgage. trying to spread that taxable more would have been much better. I also am, as far as the B&O tax, it is an unfair tax, and we need to create a different system that actually doesn't penalize people who have a low margin of profit.
So it all depends. Candidate Shumway said we should have fun and education, and that's what lightning rounds are for. So, Lindsey Shumway.
Thank you. Tax fatigue is putting it lightly. I have a lot of business owner friends who are moving to Idaho and Montana because they are tax fatigued right out of this state. So I hate to see it. It breaks my heart because small business is the lifeblood of this, all of our prosperity. So I say, if I am elected, there's no way I am going to let anything come across my desk and sign it that's going to increase property taxes or B&O taxes. Anything that requires more taxes is very unlikely to get a signature of mine.
Thank you. And Ted Cooke.
So I was controversial. I was the only one who raised some of the local jurisdictions being able to raise taxes. And I took heat for that when I interviewed with, I think it was Allied Washington Businesses or some group like that. I think local jurisdictions should have the authority to do what they want in that arena as long as they're not committing fault, and let them be the laboratory of democracy. I like that phrase, laboratory of democracy. And it sucks if you're a business owner or if you're a homeowner, but a state government powerful enough to come down and say, this is what you must do, local jurisdictions, is powerful enough to come down and say, this is what you must do, business owner, this is what you must do, homeowner, right? Do you see my concern there? I think we're being taxed way too much. Now, that said, local jurisdictions are under a heck of a pickle because the Democrats have reclassified so many taxes as being mandatory, and then they call everything else discretionary. And we're funding a whole lot of things that government doesn't necessarily need to be involved with, so I see the pain.
Thank you, Ted. So question number 4 here. Here in King County, we don't have enough housing, including homes, condos, apartments, special need housing, etc., for everyone who needs a place to live. It's not just a crisis for the homeless and low to moderate income households that need financial subsidies either. The housing crisis also affects middle-class working families who are priced out of the housing market, as well as our business owners who need both those employees and stable cost structures for their businesses to be able to survive. Here's the question. What policies or changes are needed to ensure housing is available and affordable for all economic segments of the population of this state as required by GMA's housing goal? And does the state legislature need to play a larger role in planning for a supply of housing that will be sufficient to meet the actual market demand for housing? We will start with position number 2, Lindsey Shumway.
I think we have decades-old laws on the books that are unfavorable to builders, and if I was elected, I would be looking at that, going, what can we do to help people who are building homes, contractors, come up with plans that are feasible, that support all different price structures all over King County. And I feel like, yes, protecting the environment is important, but our paramount concern needs to be making sure that the people who live in this area have a place to live. So I would look at revamping those laws that are not in favor of builders.
Representative Pat Sullivan.
So I think there is a state role, but it's actually a partnership with local jurisdictions. Every jurisdiction has different housing needs, different housing issues, and so creating those partnerships is what will work for each of those communities, because the answer will be a little bit different. So that's investing in the Housing Trust Fund that leverages local dollars, leverages nonprofit dollars to build housing. And you need that variety of stock, from emergency housing to temporary housing to long-term housing. Condominiums is one example. Right now we have a system where litigation is preventing new condos from coming in. I can tell you, my wife and I, I'm tired of mowing the lawn. There's a time soon that we're going to be looking for a condo, and we need to have condos built right here in our community. Look around South King County, you do not see them being built. But the Housing Essential Needs Program is an emergency program that's operated by the state that needs somewhat of a reform. It actually works, but it can do much better. And again, I think it's that partnership with local governments that'll be successful.
Thank you, Representative Sullivan. Ted Cooke.
So I'd like to see us ease the Growth Management Act. Right now, the cities take over an area of the county, and then they pave it over in 20 years, and then they take over another area and they pave that over. And if you're in the rural area, you can't build but one house for 5 acres. I'd like to see growth be more organic and see that eased. I'd also like to see building codes focus primarily on structural, not necessarily as much on environmental, although I understand there's an international building code group involved with that. I'd like to see permitting standardized pretty much in the state. And I'd like to see it simplified, because right now you could go to one city and you can go to one desk and get one decision and go to another desk in the same city and get another decision. I think there should be better standards in terms of that. I think we did that, it would make things easier for people to build.
Thank you. Senator Joe Fain.
I'm going to echo briefly what Pat was talking about the condo liability. If you look out north of the border in Vancouver, the skyline is full with condominiums, and even though it's a very overpriced area, you're still able to find some areas in the outskirts of downtown Vancouver that actually have starter homes that are condominiums. We don't have any of that inventory here. We've got a massive influx of people because of our economic growth, and we have no place for them to buy into. So they're all renting. And that has long-term repercussions for our economy, because it means that everybody that normally would have gotten in their early 20s or mid-20s into a lower-priced starter condominium don't have the equity to put towards a single-family home when they get a little bit older. So we have to fix that Condo Liability Act this year in the legislature. It is absolutely strangling affordability. I've also done a lot of work on this issue in terms of buildable lands inventory. We need to identify where you can build, and we need to make sure that that permitting process is streamlined.
Thank you. Mona Das.
As we all know, there's 1,000 people moving here a week, and they can't afford homes in Seattle, so they're coming down here. And they are looking for housing solutions, and we don't have any. So some of the things that we can do to help that is increase the housing stock and make sure that we have different types of housing available for folks, as other folks have mentioned, different socioeconomic backgrounds, so that they're not just looking to buy homes. Not everybody can afford to buy a home initially. I know I've been trying to work with folks who can't afford to do that. We also need to look for more innovative solutions. There's lots of solutions out there. What works in Seattle is not going to work down here, so we need to make sure that we take that approach and look for more innovative solutions regionally. And we need to make sure that we manage the growth. The growth is exponential, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. So we need to make sure that we take care of our future residents who are coming in droves.
Okay. So we have a little bit of extra time since we're missing a candidate, so for an extra question. The Supreme Court recently approved efforts to level the playing field between online businesses and brick and mortar businesses. The Washington legislature has already adopted Main Street tax fairness legislation that will allow the state and local governments to begin collecting new sales tax revenues from online purchases. What should the legislature do with additional sales tax revenues it will receive as a result of the new law and the court decision? And for this one, we're going to try to get it down to 60 seconds, and then we will begin our closing. So we will start with Debra Enterman.
I think that if we did have any additional sales tax revenues after we pay what we are responsible for paying for, I think we should think about a rainy day fund, putting some of that money in a rainy day fund.
Okay. Thank you. And Ted Cooke.
Well, we did get a huge windfall in taxes this year, and it was given to taxpayer relief instead of being channeled towards the rainy day fund, as I believe it should have been. But yeah, right now, I believe budgetary windfalls go to the rainy day fund, and that's a matter of law.
Okay. Lindsey Shumway.
Well, obviously we do need to fund the rainy day fund that is now empty, but after that, taxpayer relief.
Thank you. Representative Pat Sullivan.
Just a quick, the rainy day fund at the end of the next planning will have about $2 billion in it. So it is, it's in good shape. I would say I strongly supported the tax on internet sales. It was very unfair. I mean, I've heard story after story of people going into brick and mortar shops, like cameras, for example, getting the expertise of the shop owner, and then going home and ordering it online. And it is an unfair advantage to brick and mortar stores. So this will level the playing field. That windfall in taxes, I don't know if I call it a windfall, but the additional taxes came in was part of the McCleary plan. And so that money is going to K-12 education right now.
Senator Joe Fain.
Yeah, I'd echo Pat's comment that that was part of our solutionscape for the McCleary issue, and I also strongly supported creating that parity. It was absolutely strangling our brick and mortar businesses. I am a little concerned that $2 billion was a healthy reserve when our budget was $30 billion, but it's nearly double that right now, and you take in all of the revenue sources. And so we really do need to increase the amount we put into the rainy day fund when our economy does take a turn. Like, even if it's not as bad as we saw in the 2008-2009 recession, when the economy takes a turn, it is going to have a significant impact on our ability to preserve essential services if we don't have a stronger, better capitalized rainy day fund.
Okay, thank you. Mona Das?
I'm already seeing the effects of housing affordability. The market is softening quite a bit. So I would love to see more revenue towards reducing our property taxes so that folks can get into homes and start their path to homeownership and equity generation.
Hold the mic, Mona. So in 60 seconds, what is the one question you were, so as opposed to a closing statement, in 60 seconds, what is the one question you were not asked today that you would wish had been asked, and what's your answer to that question with 60 seconds? And I will start with you.
I think I would love to talk more about education and solutions for what we can do for our kids. Education was the paramount thing that allowed my family to thrive in this country, and I'm, very proud public school child, and I think that we need to really look forward to what we can do to educate our kids and get them into trade schools and apprenticeships. I know in my business, an apprenticeship for an appraiser is 2 years. And so we are very much lacking folks to get into that career. So we need more education and more support there.
Thank you. Senator Joe Fain.
Sure, we haven't talked quite as much as I'd expect about the issue of transportation. And we know we passed the 2015 transportation package, and I think that was a good step forward, especially for South King County. That was one of the big issues that I worked on, finishing the 167-405 interchange, getting us out to Maple Valley through Jenkins Creek, doing some of the crossovers here down in the Valley in Kent and 509 and some of those other projects, 167 to the Port of Tacoma. But it really intersects very strongly with housing affordability, and I do have criticisms for Sound Transit and the technology that we've built there. Not because I'm anti-transit, I probably ride transit more than any other legislator in Olympia, but because we've created a slow technology, we have not invested adequately in park and ride capacity, and so people that might want to make transit part of their daily life are prohibited from doing so because it's not exactly what transit should be, which is predictable. It's the opposite of that. And so I want to make sure that we're balancing those issues and really focusing on being able to get from here to there in less than the 3 hours that it takes me to do it every day.
Debra Enterman.
I wish someone would have asked about the homelessness crisis that we are in this community and other surrounding communities. I believe that many people who are homeless in our communities have mental health issues, have drug addiction issues, and so we have a public health problem, we have a housing capacity problem, and we also have just a problem with what are we going to do next. I think that rapid rehousing is a way, with supportive services, is a way to help folks who are homeless, who are either drug addicted or have mental health issues, and I think that that is something that is important for the legislature to take up in the next session.
Thank you. Representative Pat Sullivan.
Yeah, and I wish I got to go before Debra because that was my answer. Is mental health.
We can work together, Pat.
The opioid crisis and homelessness, which are all tied together in some ways, and the fact that decertification of Western State Hospital is going to cost the state $53 million per year, and we need to move those civil patients into the community, and we need to do it as quickly as we can, as efficiently and effectively as we can. For the first time last year, what seemed to be, or was always called a Seattle problem, came to light when the cities of Auburn came down, and the first thing they talked about was homelessness and mental health. That was the first thing, before transportation, before taxes, before the issues that they usually had talked about when they came to visit. It is a crisis in the state of Washington, and it's one that we're going to have to deal with. It's embarrassing where we are today versus other states. We've made a little bit of headway, but we've got a long way to go.
Lindsey Shumway.
As a health coach, I thought healthcare would be a little bit more discussed today, so I would like to talk about that for just a minute. I feel like what's going on with healthcare in our state is going to bankrupt us. It's part of the reason that we are asking the taxpayers to pay so much money is a never-ending need for access to healthcare. And as a health coach, what I have found is that people have within themselves the ability to change from a place of being unhealthy to a place of being vibrantly healthy in a short amount of time. For example, I just give you one quick story. I have a client who was going to go in for a triple bypass surgery. Came to me as a last resort, Lindsey, is there anything you can do? I helped her lose 80 pounds in 4 months, and her cardiologist and urologist, her entire team took her off the schedule. This is possible, not just for my clients, but for many, many other people with many, many issues, not just triple bypass surgery, and it costs so much less.
Thank you, Lindsey. Ted Cooke.
So thank you to Carmen, our timekeeper, great job. So mine is, I'm with Joe, I'm on transportation. I think Sound Transit 3 was sold under false premises to the voters. They said an average adult would pay $14 a month. Well, that assumes 10 or 12 million adults in the state of Washington paying for 25 years from 2016 to 2041. There's only 7.5 million people in the state. So they assumed exponential growth. It's a boondoggle. 63 miles wouldn't reach from Olympia to North Seattle if you stretched it along I-5. I'd be surprised if 3% of the state ever uses it. I think being sold on false premises, we should mothball it. Just take it off the table and build more roads. If you look at technologies like Uber is going to seriously compete with Metro and overtake it in many areas. Self-driving cars are coming. We're going to need roads. And I think that needs to be addressed with so much money going towards this real boondoggle Sound Transit.
So thank you. And as you said, thank you, Brandy, for helping us keep track of time. This is not an easy task for us. And thank you. And thank you to all of our candidates who stepped up to run, who responded to our invitation in time for us to include you in the program, and who joined us today. So we want to say thank you so much. And with that, I've given you 8 minutes of your lives back before this lunch hour, so candidates can mingle and talk. We are all dismissed.
Good job.